Hello. Now I'd like to tell you the news about the Gulf of Mexico. It's where the oil spill spread. April 20th, that's when it started. There was an oil rig that just exploded. So there are different oil companies where they were digging for oil in the Gulf of Mexico, and they were trying to clean it up, and they hit the bottom of the ocean floor, and somehow as they were digging, there was this machine that they were using for digging and pulling things up, and that's where people lived, people worked, and it was called an oil rig. And that's what exploded. And it was off balance as they were trying to dig for the oil, and that had to do with the drilling that they were doing. Rather than being solid foundation, the oil rig would move around. There's like 2,800 that it could hold of water. It's blurry, and I'm having a hard time making out what she's saying. So that was in 2013, and it's what they would use. So anyway, that oil rig where they were working, they were in drilling and digging up the oil. She's getting off screen. There wasn't any problem. All of a sudden, there's this explosion that happened at 10 o'clock at night, and everybody was trying to escape off the oil rig, and there's like 15 who escaped safely, and there's one left they had to send to the hospital. So there was boats, airplanes, everybody that was coming to try to help them out. So there was a fire, so they had to wait 22 days for that to go away. So there were 11 people that they wasn't sure where they were, and they figured that they had probably died. So that was called an oil spill, but that wasn't really the appropriate word, oil spill, because that means like there's a boat that capsizes and oil spills, and then they're able to clean it up. Quite simple. But what happened while they were drilling was an explosion, and oil was just leaking everywhere. It was quite a significant leak. Several gallons a day, like 42 million or 5,000, 2010. Anyway, so they were looking at it, observing it, trying to figure out what to do, so they thought maybe there was more than 25,000 a day that was leaking and spreading throughout the Gulf of Mexico. But in 1999, there's a boat called that capsized, and it spilled several gallons of oil. Excuse me, I said the wrong number. It was awful. So now, for 2 months, it's been spilling, which is quite a long time. So they thought maybe it was a small leak, something insignificant. Then they realized there was more leaking than what they thought, and it was a serious leak. So they're not sure why the explosion happened, but it did happen. So now they're waiting until the fire goes out, and then they can somehow stop the hole where it's leaking, which caused the explosion to happen. So now the oil leaking, or they don't know if it's 3 different locations or if it's 1 location, but now they're suspecting that it's 3 locations where the oil is leaking. somewhere deep in the ocean, possibly like 18,000 feet. Wow, that's pretty deep. So the oil well, I mean BP, they're not sure how it happened, so they put on the cap called a bottle cap to prevent the explosion from happening. But it's still, so they capped it to prevent the oil from leaking out, but it didn't work. So again, they were waiting for the fire to go out, so they were trying to, again, stop the oil from leaking. The second time their attempt failed. So they decided to try another method to cap it, to stop the leaking. They still weren't able to have success. So something else they tried was to get a box to actually put deep down on the ocean floor to cover the leak, and then have a boat where the oil was leaking to clean the oil out of the ocean. But they needed 3 just to make sure they were able to go deep enough to compress the oil leak, make sure it was strong enough to stop the leak from happening. So they tried for 4 weeks to stop the leak. There's another oil rig that was going down to where the leak is, and they tried to put a cap on the leak to close the leak. So they got that all set up and ready to go to prevent the oil from leaking. So they finally got permission to try that attempt. So they went down to the ocean where the leak was happening, and it took a long time. It took like 2 or 3 months. They worked really hard to get to where the leak was. And now it's starting to come to the surface of the ocean and starting to spread, and so it's oily and leaky. So people are really worried how it's going to ruin the land, the soil, and all these different kinds of birds that are in the area, different wildlife that lives there. So they've gone shopping, different restaurants, different stores in the area. I don't know, because they don't want businesses don't want their businesses to fail because of the oil leak that's happening in the area, like 40%, which is quite a significant risk because they're going to lose money. So they've been working on it, trying to fix the leak. So they've been bringing different workers and different people involved, trying to close this leak, or they had to close the businesses because of the oil leak. So people were worried it was going to ruin their economy in the local area. So they decided to go ahead and scoop up all of it and bring it. Sorry, I'm lost. I'm lost. I have no idea what she's talking about. So they're help setting things up to prevent the oil from leaking onto the beach. So it has ruined several things: wildlife, businesses. People used to go there for vacation. So they're trying to collect money for all these different people, different businesses, such as Florida. They've had to cancel their vacations, their hotel reservations. Some people had their fish was ruined, the animals died. It was an awful disaster. Something about the schools. So now they're ready to stay and trying to figure out what to do in that area and to compress the oil.